Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman. Today, I'm joined by an old friend and colleague of mine, Captain Joseph Sacchetti. He's an Army Ranger who served 2 tours in Iraq and was awarded the Bronze Star for actions in combat. So that kind of leaves most of us in awe just right there. But after leading the troops, he successfully transitioned into the business world, which isn't easy because I talk to a lot of people who go from either the athletics or the military, and transitioning into the business world takes a lot of work. He sold and managed in the pharma industry for a decade, and for the past 18 years, he's been in high tech, which is where I met Joe. He graduated from MIT Business School in 2018 and took over the role as a global VP for a Utah-based startup called KeyedIn, and put that MIT research to work and is building a world-class channel. He leads by example through his passion to mentor teammates and athletes. He coached the 2014 track high school national champions at Cardinal O'Hara High School, and himself a 2-time master track and field All-American in the half mile, which is why he's in such good shape, and I've always been in awe. Joe wrote a book, which is why we got to talking, called Leading Rangers, which is his experience in the military and how he translates that into the business world. Joe, thanks for being on the show.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for having me. I am thrilled to be here today, but also I'm just thrilled to talk to you again. It's great
Hey,
to
isn't it nice to
run
connect?
run back into each other. And isn't it funny how people that are doing great things out there sort of keep cycling back to see each other? So I'm super happy that we are back in touch.
Yeah, the podcast has been, for me, one of the biggest blessings of the podcast is people from my entire career have come back into my life. And now we get to talk about the things that, like, because we were kind of in the trenches together. Like, I'll never compare this to the military, but the high tech industry at the turn of the century, and after 9/11 and all that, it was pretty stressful.
It absolutely was. And by the way, this is one of the great points that we're gonna chat about, and we get to it right off the bat because you just said we were in the trenches together, and absolutely, people that are out there in business and sports doing well love to make analogies to the military, especially the elite combat folks, and often. They're so great about it, and they say, "Hey, I don't mean to suggest we did something," just
Never
like
in
you
a
did. You're
million
so
years.
kind. However, you should know that elite combat troops, they absolutely love when you're making, successful people are making analogies. And I will tell you, I was just chatting with a friend of mine, Jeff Blum. He's the announcer for the Houston Astros, a super guy, and he's a real friend of the
He's having a really
military.
good time at the moment, by the way.
Oh my gosh, is it the best place to be? The Houston Astros, and he was a member of the Cubs when he hit a home run against the Houston Astros in the World Series, and then he went to Houston to be their announcer. So they love him, and he's a real friend of first responders and the military. And we had this conversation that. Tell them troops love when you throw a shout out, but when baseball players and these super athletes are referring using military analogies, that makes our boys feel great over in Afghanistan. I mean, what could be better than our heroes, that are hitting home runs, talking about them? So it's pretty
That
cool.
that's good to know, and I appreciate that. So why did you write the book?
Well, Leading Rangers, which by the way is due out in spring of 2020, is a story that relates active duty and combat missions from the nation's most elite soldiers, and relates it to everyday life, especially business and young leaders in business. And so there's so many things to learn from, and you can bring over. Luckily, we don't
Well,
have to
now,
be firing grenades.
I'm going to ask you to slow down now because you didn't answer the question I asked.
Okay.
The question I asked was, why did you write the book?
Why
I
did I
get what
write it?
it is. I
Okay.
want to know what's motivating Joe.
Well, that's a great question because no one's actually asked me that question before. Because why did I write it? I wanted us to tell the story. I wanted to relate stories and experiences that galvanized my entire existence, from being a young punk kid who thought he could conquer the world to being over with people shooting at you. and amassing troops and hiding and fighting for survival. And I really wanted to tell that story. And I will say this: I wanted to share the experiences that I had with some of the greatest human beings I've ever gotten to know. And that was my buddy on my left, the buddy on my right, guys I served with, people that worked for me and people I worked for that are just the best people in the world. And so it took me a while because as you know, I've been out for 25 years. Now's the time to write that story.
Why is it now?
Well, as you as you well know, with mastering midlife, there's a certain inflection point in all our lives, and let's just call it 50. I mean, what does 50 mean? I don't even know what 50 is, but 50 is a number, and it's at that point when you do something to really make the next 50 years as awesome as the first. I think you've got to reinvent yourself in one of the major ways, one of the major things you do in life. So. Uh,
So
this is the time.
this book is your call. This book is now you're taking um, all that experience. Like you were in the military, that was visceral, that was real time, that was in the moment. Then you're thrust out into the world and you're trying to build a career in sales in something new, and you know that's real time, and you really don't have time to think. You don't have time to ponder reinvention. You just got to work, right? And you just got to keep going on the edge of your sword. Now, as you say, we're in midlife, we're in 50, and I'm constantly defining that for people. What does midlife mean? Well, you can be 32 years old and have kids, have a baby, and that's midlife because you're trying to figure out what's next. So now you have a time to reflect. And the thing that you reflect, and the thing I heard that I felt most from you is I wanted to tell the story about the greatest people I have ever met, right? The people who were to the left and to the right of me, in those jobs. And I felt that. And now you're telling your story and their story.
And you're right. There's about a 20-year period for us all where your head is down in the new trenches, right, out in the civilian world, and you don't have a time, you don't have the resources of the time to make that effort to really, figure everything out and digest it. And now is that time, and it's a great time. And you also, I think you find that everyone finds their voice. Um, Sometimes we don't think that people are ready to listen to us yet. When we're in our 30s, but mostly we're head down and getting the work done, and it finally comes around to be able to share.
So before we get into specifics, let's go all the way to the end. So on your tombstone, what do you want people to remember you for?
I'd like them to think that this is a guy that made some small difference to some small set of people.
And what difference is that?
Well, kids that I coach often ask or at me, what can I do to repay everything you've done to make me understand I can go out there and conquer the world. And I just say, pay it forward. So now you're going to get a chance. You're going to coach kids, and you're going to keep paying it forward. I mean, I kind of love that phrase of that movie. Uh, that's the difference that you instill a bunch of young people to go out there and pay it forward.
Who are you paying it forward for?
Well, um,
Who are you paying it forward for?
oh, who my from my mentors that took time out of their schedules, their lives, and said, "Hey, this is how you keep people alive in the trenches, or this is how you build personal wealth, or this is how you give back to your community." So I can think to my high school track coach, and I can think back to my first colonel, and my karate instructor, and my dad. And so that's just a list that came off the top of my head.
Thank you. So, it's funny because I have people on the show who wrote books. I have people who bring expertise, but to me, it's all sterile and it's all incidental if I don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
And to hear where yours coming from, what you're doing with this, you didn't write this book for a vanity project. You're paying forward all the experiences, all the things that people poured into you.
Well, man, the last thing that I wanted to accomplish in this book, the thing that I don't want to be is that preachy person that thinks that they somehow got these pearls of wisdom, and we do read a lot of that kind of stuff. That's why I think that stories tell give you the picture, and they really teach the lesson. The reader can infer a good lesson from a good story. And if they just think of it as a good story, that's fine. Maybe you love the story of when three of us had to kick a door in on the Iraqi border, and it goes and that's where it ends. But if someone wants to infer that someone's got to be the first man in through the door and that there's some leadership to be had, well, good for them, because that's the idea.
So now let's talk about the conversation you and I had before I turned on the recording, which was it's time to evolve. You're hitting your 50s and it's time to evolve. What do you
Well,
have?
yes, guess what? Everybody comes to 50 as that magic number we just call midlife, and it threatens to just plod along unless you decide to do something proactive. And the way I think of it is reinventing a piece of your life. So I think that it's incumbent for all of us, men and women that are over 50, to choose one piece of our lives and reinvent that. And you got some choices, right? It can be um, fitness, and it could be your accomplishments. It could be coaching or teaching. It could be education, or it could even be love. I sort of saved that one for the end because because it's controversial. It doesn't mean go out and find a love. It means reimagine what you have already. Right? Start traveling to Europe with your significant other, or pick up golf or whatever. But you reinvent some piece, and then I think what the interesting thing is, how do we define reinventing? Now, like if we take fitness for example, if I just start jogging twice a week, that's good, and no one's going to argue with that. But if you want to elevate it to the level of reinventing, well, then pick an event, and make a goal. Or maybe it's a marathon or a triathlon or a biking race, and really give it an effort such that you're feeling that you've actually reinvented a
So
piece.
so pick an almost impossible goal.
Okay, yeah, and I love all the the accolades and all the stuff that goes around that word impossible. Yeah, pick something that's a stretch and make that a goal, because you're going to find you really have to stretch the rubber band almost till it breaks to get there. Now, so for me, one of them was finish the education. Now, I had a great education at a 4-year bachelor's degree at a small Catholic college in Philadelphia in the 80s. Okay, great, love it. But with all the other things that I was able to do, and I thought, boy, I'd really love to get that next piece done. So, of course, you and I were in technology for many years, and I gave a shot at MIT, which, by the way, I didn't get in the first time or the second time. It took me the third time, but that's a good story in itself. And I'm happy to say that I went there and got my executive certificate in strategy and innovation. And man, it's great. And it's the best time and resource I ever spent. And it feels good.
So you picked something that was a stretch, but something that came from inside, and accomplished that, and that was your transformation. That
Yeah,
was
I think
that
so.
was your transformation in that area.
Yeah, in that area, and I know where you're going with it, and you are right. Well, once you get a sense of the fact that you can really stretch yourself and reinvent in one area, why not keep going, right? And that we keep going with the job or the accomplishments or the relationship, and of course, I also love to do some coaching, and that kind of goes with giving back. And then if you're going to do something, why not do it super well? With unlimited time and resources, how about if you were able to go back to a high school and say, I really like this team to do as well as they could, and you could help them get to the promised land.
Which is what you're doing with the coaching of high school.
That's right. I spent some time while my own boys were going to track, or were going to high school, and they were in this track program at Cardinal O'Hara. They had a great program, and they were nice enough to let me jump in on the staff as a volunteer and bring some of that sort of corporate Army Ranger know-how. And they did very well. A lot of state champions and whatnot. And the pinnacle was that the boys distance medley actually won the national championship in 2014.
That's incredible. So you just said something really cool. That corporate Army Ranger input. Can you define the corporate Army Ranger input? Because I've always known, like, I knew you when you were new to the company. You were kind of new to the industry, and one of the things that everybody always said about you was he may not know how to do it, he may not know the technology or whatever, but Joe will get it done. You can trust Joe. If he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it. He's going to find out how to do it. He's going to find out who can do it. Right. So I have a sense that that's part of what you're talking about.
I think you're right. I mean, the Army Ranger adapts, improvises, and overcomes. And it's usually to some type of stimulus that you weren't expecting. And so, if we take that to the corporate world, as you're learning your technology, and by the way, how about if you and I, we became experts at the technology at the time that we were selling, within 3 years, it was moot
And
because we're
now it's within 6 months.
okay, it's moved on to something different. So we're constantly having to stay on top of our game, and in a sense, to really master that corporate Army Ranger of acumen, we've got to be able to be ready to adapt and improvise to overcome over and over again.
So hold on. You said something that I don't want to forget, and I'm already forgetting it. So I don't want the listener to forget. You said adapt and overcome and improvise when there's some sort of stimulus, right?
Yes.
Some unnatural stimulus, which is something that's really interesting to me. I spend a lot of time working with people dealing with the unexpected is going to happen. You just don't know what it is,
Right.
right? You're going to get fired. You're going to get a promotion. You're going to get sick, right? Or or something's going to happen. And if you can be the best you can be at that moment and the most flexible and the most open, then you could be adaptable, innovative. So again, I want you to be really clear on that statement that you made so that people can walk away with it.
Okay, right. And anyone who saw the Clint Eastwood movie, um, which I'm forgetting now, where he plays Gunny Highway. I mean, he talks about Heartbreak Ridge. You have to be able to adapt. That's mean, change what I was doing. I was on this glide path up till a moment ago, and now I'm faced with something different that I must adapt. And in order to do it, I have to improvise. I have to change my course of action. And if I do that well, I mean, if I improvise wrong, I'm not going to do it. If I improvise correctly, I will overcome. And we're going to see, just like you said, that those stimuli, the company we're in gets bought, the product changes, something, I change my personnel, or your star employees are moving on, and guess what? We want them to move on. We want them to, and after we have to replace them. So when we set up, a good foundation for how we act, it just gets us through life better.
That's so brilliant, and I like when people with you like you who have the credibility, who from again your Army Ranger time, to be able to and then translate it to things that most of us can understand, and that will stick with someone viscerally. So I appreciate that.
Well, thanks. One of the messages that I find myself saying a lot is that people that I meet in the business world that are so real, so amazing. They're so humble inside, and say, I couldn't hope to have that kind of experience. And my message to all these successful people is, you do. You've got it inside. You've got that piece. You've got a piece that I would have gladly had you in my foxhole with me. You just didn't. This person might not have had that experience. I mean, they were at a different place in a different time, and not all of us serve. But there's that hero inside, or that ability to just not give up. And when you see it, you kind of recognize it.
You know, Thank you. I get that because I was asked to speak to a group of Army vets with PTSD. They were in a PTSD program, and they wanted me to come speak, and I was terrified. I was like, "What do I have to say to these people? I'm not a doctor. I'm not even that bright. Like, there's no experience I have will relate to them." And my coach dropped me into my life experiences. Am I being suicidal? Am I being homeless? And all those things. And he said, just open your heart, speak from your heart, and go talk to these people. So I went and I spoke from my heart. I never used the word PTSD. I had PTSD, but I never used the word. I never said I was like them. I just shared my experience. I never said anything about specifically what the experience was. And they all came up to me afterwards and asked me where I served.
Hmm.
And that blew me away that my humanity around the PTSD that I lived with and that I had to overcome related to theirs.
Right. You gave them a pure moment, and it was so pure that they filtered out and everything else, all the noise, and just thought of you as a brother. I think that's probably what happened in that moment, and that is that's a wonderful thing, and I think you figured out ahead of time that the soldier that's coming back from another part of the world, he quickly realizes that there's nothing else that's ever going to approximate that experience when he gets back, and often thinks that there'll be very few people, precious few, if any, that will understand that experience. And people fumble around constantly trying to get there, trying to preface what they want to say. And I think you just cut right through it that on that day, and you just shared your experience and were eminently positive. I'm certain of that, and it resonated with them. And I'm glad you had that experience.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. So what's next for you? What's on the agenda? The book's coming out in 2020. I see that you're doing a lot of speaking and keynote kind of stuff. What are you talking about from the stage?
Well, leadership in general is always a cool topic, and people like to use that for business or young folks. I was just at Temple University during last week, and they had their professional sales organization. It's kind of a national cool thing, and I was really impressed that these students are really on the ball. Uh, and I love talking to people that already have a little bit of motivation. That's kind of cool. I was also at F&M talking to the wrestling team and department. And so, I love wrestlers. Man, they're sort of the Army Ranger of sports. I mean, no one gives them any credit. They're dirty. You get your face smashed into the mat every practice, and there's no hardly any glory to it. So I think the leadership message is always one that resonates no matter what we're doing, and so it's fun to talk about.
Great. Joe, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put your website on my show notes because there's videos of you and there's all kinds of stuff with the wisdom that you're sharing, your blog posts and all that stuff. Really want your wisdom out in the world, and I appreciate you sharing with us. And then we'll promote it when your book comes out. You got to let us know.
Well, that's great. Thanks. I've got this website, Army Ranger at MIT, which, by the way, gets a lot of interest and a lot of comments. People are wondering, what is it? It sounds cool. It sounds like two cool things, and it gives me the chance to talk about travel and leadership and cool stuff like that. I'll leave everyone with this thought that if you absolutely are looking for something it's a breakthrough, take a trip you've never taken before. I mean, get out of this country, go somewhere cool. Next week, I will be in Vietnam and Cambodia, again, doing some research, seeing some cool stuff, and it just opens your eyes to the world, and you can be, a good citizen of the world. So thank you for having me. I can't believe the time flew by this fast, but it's always great talking to you, Mark.
Joe, thank you. I appreciate it. And to everybody else, I really thank you for your time and attention. I love you. Have a great rest of the day.